The gunshot echoed across the valley as Olivia Thornton ducked behind an overturned wagon, her heart racing wildly beneath her dusty travel dress. Not exactly how she'd imagined her arrival in Palisade, Wyoming territory in the spring of 1875. The stagecoach robbery had come out of nowhere, leaving the driver dead and passengers scattered. Through the chaos, she caught sight of a lone figure on horseback charging toward the bandits, his silhouette unmistakable against the setting sun. Zachary Quinn had been tracking the Hanson gang for 3 days when he heard the gunfire. He'd spent 5 years as a lawman in these parts, and though he'd turned in his badge last winter, old habits died hard. His palomino thundered across the open ground as he drew his Colt revolver, determination etched across his weathered face. "Get down," he shouted to the woman behind the wagon, noticing her copper hair catching the last rays of sunlight. The gang members turned their attention to this new threat, giving the surviving passengers a chance to seek better cover. 3 against 1 weren't favorable odds, but Zach had faced worse. He fired twice, hitting one man in the shoulder before dismounting and rolling behind a boulder as bullets ricocheted around him. Olivia watched the stranger with a mixture of fear and fascination. She wasn't helpless growing up with 3 brothers had taught her plenty, but the small derringer hidden in her boot wouldn't do much good from this distance. Instead, she spotted the driver's shotgun lying nearby and made a decision. Taking a deep breath, she lunged for the weapon, the movement catching the attention of the nearest robber. He swung his pistol toward her just as she grabbed the shotgun. A shot rang out from behind the boulder, and the man dropped to the ground clutching his leg. "Lady, you've got guts," the stranger called out, "but maybe hold your position." "Wasn't planning on dancing," Olivia called back, checking if the shotgun was loaded. It was. The remaining bandits, realizing the tide had turned, retreated to their horses. One fired wildly in their direction as they galloped away, dust clouds billowing behind them. As silence settled across the scene, Zachary approached cautiously, holstering his weapon. "You all right, madam?" Olivia stood, brushing dust from her skirts with one hand while still gripping the shotgun with the other. "I'm in one piece, which is more than I can say for our poor driver." She looked toward the man slumped over the coach box, her expression somber. "Name's Zachary Quinn," he said, removing his hat briefly. "Former sheriff from Cottonwood Falls." "Olivia Thornton," she replied, finally setting down the shotgun. "School teacher, or at least I will be once I reach Palisade." Zach's eyebrows raised slightly. "That's where I'm headed." "Town's expecting a new teacher." "Well, they're getting one, provided I can find transportation for the last 20 miles. She gestured to the damaged stagecoach, one wheel completely shattered from a stray bullet. The other passengers began to emerge from hiding an elderly couple and a young man who introduced himself as a bank clerk bound for Cheyenne. None were injured beyond minor scrapes and bruises. "We can't stay here," Zach said, looking at the darkening sky. "Bandits might return with reinforcements." "There's a way station about 5 miles east. We can make it before full dark if we leave now." "What about him?" Olivia asked, nodding toward the driver. "We'll bring him. Man deserves a proper burial." Working together, they secured the driver's body to Zach's horse. The elderly couple would ride in the clerk's rented buggy, which had been trailing the stagecoach and miraculously remained undamaged. That left Olivia to share Zach's mount. "I can walk," she insisted, though her feet already ached from the journey. 20 miles of Wyoming territory at night. "Not advisable," Zach replied, extending his hand. "Besides, Samson here can handle 2 riders for a short distance." Reluctantly, Olivia accepted his help up onto the horse, settling behind him. She hesitated before placing her hands lightly on his waist. "You'll want to hold tighter than that once we get moving, Miss Thornton," he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "I'll manage, Mr. Quinn," she responded, though she tightened her grip slightly. As they rode toward the way station, the vast Wyoming landscape spread before them, painted in shades of purple and gold by the setting sun. Despite the circumstances, Olivia couldn't help but marvel at its wild beauty. "So what brings a former sheriff to Palisade?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Ranch land," Zach replied. My uncle left me his property when he passed last month. Never thought I'd be a rancher, but seems like fate had other ideas. I'm sorry about your uncle. Appreciate that. He lived a good, long life. Zach paused. What about you? Palisade's a small town for someone coming all the way from Boston, she supplied, and it wasn't exactly my first choice. The horse navigated around a rocky outcropping, forcing Olivia to grip Zach's waist more firmly as she swayed. Most teaching positions for women are in small frontier towns these days, she continued once she'd regained her balance. After my father passed, staying in Boston wasn't an option. Your husband didn't object to you coming west alone. I don't have a husband, Mr. Quinn, she said firmly. Nor am I particularly looking for one, Zach chuckled. Fair enough, just unusual to see a woman traveling these parts unescorted. I'm hardly the first and certainly won't be the last. The world is changing. Maybe so, he conceded, though out here change comes slower than most places. They reached the way station just as night fell completely. It was a modest establishment, a main building with a small dining room and a separate stable. The station master, a grizzled man named Harley, greeted them with concern upon seeing their bedraggled state. Stage robbery, Zach explained briefly. Driver didn't make it. These folks need rooms for the night. Got 2 rooms available, Harley said, eyeing the group. Tight quarters, but better than sleeping outside with wolves about. The elderly couple and the bank clerk took 1 room, leaving the second for Olivia. Zach opted to sleep in the stables with Samson after helping Harley place the driver's body in a storage shed until proper authorities could be notified. Olivia was too restless for sleep, despite her exhaustion. After washing up with the basin of water provided in her room, she made her way to the small porch outside the way station. The night air was cool but not unpleasant, carrying the scent of sage and distant pine. She wasn't surprised when Zach joined her a few minutes later, offering a mug of coffee. Thought you might need this, he said. It's not good, but it's hot. Thank you. She accepted the mug gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. Zach leaned against the porch railing, his own coffee untouched. In the moonlight, Olivia could better see his features' strong jaw shadowed by stubble, lines around his eyes suggesting he smiled more than he frowned, and a small scar across his right cheekbone. You handled yourself well back there, he said. Not many women would have gone for that shotgun. Not many women grow up with 3 brothers who insisted their sister know how to defend herself, she replied with a small smile. My father encouraged it too, much to my mother's dismay. They sound like sensible men. They were, she said softly. The influenza took all 3 brothers last year. Father never really recovered from the loss. I'm sorry, Zach said, and she could tell he meant it. Loss like that, it changes a person. Olivia nodded, sipping her coffee to hide the sudden tightness in her throat. Is that why you left your position as sheriff? Loss, Zach stared out at the darkness for a long moment. Something like that. Lost my deputy good friend in a shootout with cattle rustlers. Started questioning if the badge was worth the cost. They fell into companionable silence, each lost in their own thoughts as the vast canopy of stars wheeled overhead. We should try to sleep, Zach finally said. I'll arrange transportation to Palisade in the morning. Town's not far, we can be there by midday if we start early. Thank you for your help today, Mr. Quinn, Olivia said sincerely. I suspect I might have been in quite a different situation without your intervention. Just happened to be in the right place, he demurred, and it's just Zach. Mr. Quinn makes me feel like my father. Then thank you, Zach, she said with a small smile, and you may call me Olivia since it seems we're to be neighbors in Palisade. He tipped his hat slightly, a gesture that seemed so natural it must have been ingrained from years of practice. Good night, Olivia, rest well. As she returned to her room, Olivia found herself intrigued by the former sheriff. He wasn't what she'd expected to find in Wyoming territory. There was a thoughtfulness to him that belied the rough exterior. But she reminded herself that she hadn't come west to find a man. She had a position to fill, students who needed education, and a new life to build. Romance was most certainly not part of her plan. The journey to Palisade the next day passed without incident. Harley had arranged for a local rancher making the trip to town to take Olivia and the elderly couple in his wagon, while Zach rode alongside. The bank clerk had decided to wait for the next scheduled stage to Cheyenne. As they approached Palisade, Olivia took in her first real view of the town that would be her home. It was larger than she'd anticipated, a proper main street lined with wooden buildings, a church steeple visible at one end, and various homes scattered around the periphery. Horses were hitched outside the general store, and children played in the spaces between buildings. "What do you think?" Zach asked, noticing her assessment. "It's encouraging," she admitted. "More established than some of the places I passed through on my journey." The wagon pulled up in front of the Palisade Hotel, a two-story structure with a wide porch. A plump woman with gray streaked hair bustled out to greet them. "You must be Miss Thornton," she exclaimed. "We'd nearly given up hope when the stage didn't arrive yesterday." "I'm Martha Willoughby, head of the school board. Please forgive our delay," Olivia said, accepting help down from the wagon. "There was an unfortunate incident with bandits. Mr. Quinn here came to our rescue." Martha's eyes widened as she looked to Zach. "Zachary Quinn. Heard you might be coming to take over your uncle's place. Didn't expect you'd be escorting our new school teacher." "Wasn't planned that way," Zach said with a nod. "Just fortunate timing." "Well, come in," Martha urged, leading Olivia toward the hotel. "We've arranged a room for you until the schoolhouse is ready. There's living quarters attached, you see, but they needed some fixing up." Olivia turned back briefly. "Thank you again for everything, Mr. Zach." "My pleasure, Miss Thornton," he replied with that same slight tip of his hat. "Welcome to Palisade." She watched as he led his horse toward the livery stable, then followed Martha into the hotel, ready to begin her new chapter. The following weeks passed in a flurry of activity as Olivia settled into life in Palisade. The schoolhouse, a modest but sturdy building at the edge of town, required cleaning and organizing before classes could begin. The attached living quarters were simple but comfortable, with a bedroom, small sitting area, and functional kitchen. The townspeople proved welcoming, if curious about the new teacher from Boston. She quickly learned that news traveled fast in a community this size, and by the end of her first week, everyone knew about the stagecoach robbery and her arrival with Zachary Quinn. "Quite the entrance you made," commented Irene Fisher, the shopkeeper's wife, as Olivia selected fabric for new curtains. "Arriving with Zach Quinn like that. It was hardly planned," Olivia replied, examining a bolt of blue calico. "Mr. Quinn was simply kind enough to help when trouble arose." "He's a good man," Irene said, measuring out the fabric. "His uncle, old Samuel Quinn, was one of the first settlers here, left him that nice spread north of town. Everyone wondered if Zach would actually come claim it after all these years away." Olivia found herself curious despite her better judgment. "Has he visited before?" "Oh, a few times over the years. Last time must have been 3 summers ago, before he took that sheriff position over in Cottonwood Falls. Heard he was quite respected there." Olivia nodded, recalling the confident way he'd handled the bandits. "He mentioned he'd given up his badge." Irene leaned closer, lowering her voice though the shop was empty. "They say he lost his deputy in a terrible shootout. Man was his best friend since boyhood. Some folks say that's why he left law work, couldn't bear to put anyone else in harm's way." The bell above the shop door jingled, ending their conversation as another customer entered. Olivia paid for her fabric and supplies, her mind turning over this new information about Zach. She hadn't seen him since their arrival in town, though she'd heard he was busy getting his uncle's ranch back in working order. Not that she was looking for him, she reminded herself firmly. The following Sunday, Olivia attended services at the town's small church. She'd been introduced to Reverend Miller during her first days in Palisade, but hadn't yet joined the congregation for worship. Dressed in her best navy blue dress, she sat near the back, nodding politely to the families she recognized. Just as the service was about to begin, the door opened and Zachary Quinn stepped inside. His usual trail clothes had been replaced by a clean white shirt and dark vest, his hair neatly combed beneath his hat, which he promptly removed upon entering. Their eyes met briefly as he scanned for an empty seat, and Olivia felt an unexpected flutter in her chest when he nodded in recognition. To her surprise, he slid into the pew beside her. "Miss Thornton," he greeted quietly. "Mr. Quinn," she returned. "I wasn't sure you were still in town." "Been busy at the ranch," he explained. "Finally got things sorted enough to come in for supplies and Sunday service." Further conversation was prevented as Reverend Miller began the service, but Olivia found herself acutely aware of Zach's presence beside her. The hymnal they shared seemed unnecessarily small, their fingers nearly touching each time they turned a page. After the service, congregants gathered outside to socialize. Several parents introduced themselves to Olivia, eager to meet their children's new teacher before school began the following week. "Miss Thornton is going to have her hands full with my boys," one mother said with a laugh. "They've got more energy than sense sometimes." "I'm looking forward to the challenge," Olivia assured her. "Children's enthusiasm can be directed into learning with the right approach." "You sound experienced," observed Zach, who had remained nearby. "I taught at a girls' school in Boston for 3 years," she explained. "Though I expect a one-room schoolhouse with children of all ages will present different challenges." As the crowd thinned, Zach cleared his throat. "I was planning to have lunch at the hotel restaurant. Would you care to join me? I'd be interested to hear how you're finding Palisade so far." Olivia hesitated. Dining alone with a man would certainly set tongues wagging in this small town. On the other hand, they'd already traveled together, and it was merely a friendly meal in a public place. "Thank you, that would be nice," she decided. "I haven't had many opportunities for adult conversation this past week." The hotel restaurant was busy with the after-church crowd, but they managed to secure a small table near the window. Olivia removed her gloves and bonnet while Zach ordered coffee for them both. "So, how are you settling in?" he asked once the waitress had departed. "Quite well, actually. Everyone has been very welcoming and the schoolhouse is nearly ready for students. Classes begin tomorrow." "Nervous," she smiled. "A little. It's different from my previous position, but I'm ready for the challenge, and you?" "How is ranch life treating the former sheriff?" A wry smile crossed his face. "It's an adjustment. I know cattle and horses well enough, but being responsible for an entire operation is new territory." He paused as their coffee arrived, along with bowls of beef stew and fresh bread. "Uncle Samuel left the place in good condition, but it's been neglected these past months since he fell ill." "Do you have help?" "Hired 2 hands last week, brothers from Montana with good references. And there's Cooper, the foreman who worked for my uncle for 15 years. He's been keeping things from falling apart completely." They fell into easy conversation as they ate, discovering shared interests in literature and history. Zach revealed he'd attended 2 years of college in St. Louis before the call of the West had proven too strong to resist. "My father was furious," he recalled with a chuckle. "Had plans for me to take over his shipping business. Couldn't understand why anyone would choose this uncivilized wilderness over city life." "And yet here you are," Olivia observed. "Here I am," he agreed. "Never regretted it, even on the hardest days." His expression grew thoughtful. "What about you? Was teaching always your ambition?" "Not exactly. I'd hoped to attend university, but there were limited options for women. Teaching was an acceptable alternative." She stirred her coffee absently. "After my brothers and father died, it became necessary to support myself. Coming west offered better pay and independence. It takes courage to leave everything familiar behind, or desperation," she replied, then immediately regretted the candor. "Forgive me, that sounded more dramatic than intended. No need for apologies. Starting over isn't easy, no matter the circumstances." He met her eyes. "For what it's worth, I think Palisade is fortunate to have you." The sincerity in his voice brought warmth to her cheeks. "Thank you." As they finished their meal, Zach mentioned he'd be in town periodically for supplies. "Perhaps we could meet for coffee occasionally. I suspect you might appreciate adult conversation after days surrounded by children." The offer was tempting. Despite her determination to remain focused on her teaching position, Olivia had to admit she enjoyed Zach's company. "That would be nice, though my schedule will be rather full once school begins." "Saturday afternoons," he suggested. "I usually come to town for supplies then anyway." "I think I could manage that," she agreed, trying to ignore the pleased feeling his smile evoked. The following morning, Olivia stood before her classroom of 23 students ranging from 6 to 16 years of age. Their curious faces watched her expectantly as she introduced herself and outlined her expectations for the school year. Teaching in Palisade proved both challenging and rewarding. The older students had received inconsistent education from a series of teachers who rarely stayed more than a year, while the youngest had minimal formal schooling at all. Olivia quickly established a routine, grouping children by ability rather than strictly by age, and implementing systems that allowed her to divide her attention effectively. The promised Saturday meetings with Zach became a highlight of her weeks. Sometimes they simply shared coffee at the hotel restaurant. Other times they walked through town, discussing books or local happenings. Occasionally, he would bring news from the wider world, having received newspapers from Cheyenne or Denver. The railroad's expanding again, he mentioned one crisp October afternoon as they sat on a bench outside the general store. They're saying the line might come through Clearwater Junction, just 30 miles south, within 2 years. That would certainly change things around here, Olivia observed, watching townspeople go about their Saturday business. Change is inevitable, Zach replied. Though folks here might resist it at first, there's something to be said for the quiet life. Olivia studied his profile, noting the relaxed set of his shoulders. You seem more settled than when we first met. Ranch life agrees with you. He considered this. I think it does. There's satisfaction in building something, watching it grow. Different from enforcing the law, but rewarding in its own way. No regrets about leaving your badge behind. A shadow crossed his features. Some days I wonder if I could have done more, saved more lives, but then I remember the cost. He shook his head slightly. No, I don't regret the change. What about you, missing the comforts of Boston yet? Hardly, she laughed. Though I do occasionally long for a well-stocked bookshop or theater. Civilization has its advantages, he conceded with a smile. As autumn progressed toward winter, Olivia found herself looking forward to these conversations more than was probably wise. She reminded herself frequently that her position as schoolteacher required a certain propriety, and that romantic entanglements could jeopardize the independence she'd worked so hard to achieve. Yet each time Zach appeared at the schoolhouse door on Saturday afternoons, hat in hand and that warm smile on his face, her resolve weakened just a little more. The first heavy snow came in early December, blanketing Palisade in white. School continued despite the weather, though attendance dwindled on particularly cold days as families from outlying farms and ranches kept children home. Olivia was just dismissing her students one Friday afternoon when she heard the now familiar sound of Zach's horse outside. Surprised by his unexpected visit, she hurriedly straightened her desk as the last children bundled into their winter clothes and departed with cheerful goodbyes. "Mr. Quinn," called young Tommy Jenkins as he passed Zach in the doorway, "Miss Thornton's teaching us about dinosaur bones." "Did you know they found some in Colorado?" "I didn't," Zach replied seriously. "Sounds like you're learning important things." "The most important," Tommy agreed solemnly before dashing out to join his waiting siblings. Zach removed his hat as he entered the schoolhouse, brushing snow from his coat. "Hope I'm not interrupting," he said. "Not at all," Olivia assured him. "We just finished for the day. Is everything all right? I wasn't expecting to see you until tomorrow." "Everything's fine," he said, though she noted a certain nervousness in his manner. "I needed to come to town for some business with the bank, and I wanted to ask you something that couldn't wait until tomorrow." Olivia's heart quickened inexplicably. "Oh." "The town's holding its Christmas social next Friday evening. There'll be music, dancing, food." He shifted his hat in his hands. "I was wondering if you'd allow me to escort you." The invitation shouldn't have surprised her, yet somehow it did. Their Saturday meetings had remained friendly but proper, with no explicit acknowledgement of deeper feelings. This request seemed to cross an unspoken boundary. "That's very kind," she began carefully, "but as the town's teacher, I should probably attend independently. There are expectations regarding my conduct." I understand, he said quickly, disappointment evident despite his attempt to hide it. It was just a thought. It's not that I wouldn't enjoy your company, she added hurriedly, then paused, unsure how to express her conflicted feelings. It's just that my position here is still new, and I don't want to give anyone reason to question my commitment to the school. Zach nodded, his expression clearing somewhat. You're right, of course. Teaching comes with its own set of rules. He managed a smile. Perhaps we can still share a dance or two at the social as friends? I'd like that, she agreed, relieved by his understanding. As he turned to leave, he hesitated. Weather looks to be turning worse. Can I walk you home? The offer was tempting. Snow was falling more heavily now, and the short walk to her living quarters behind the schoolhouse suddenly seemed less appealing. Thank you, but it's just around the building. I'll be fine, he nodded again. Until tomorrow, then. Stay warm, Olivia. As the door closed behind him, Olivia sank into her chair, troubled by the emotions churning within her. Why had she declined his offer for the social? The practical reasons she'd given were valid but not entirely truthful. The full truth was that she was afraid of the feelings developing despite her determination to remain independent. Afraid of the vulnerability that came with caring for someone, and perhaps most of all, afraid of the possibility that he might not share the depth of her growing attachment. The Christmas social arrived, and Olivia dressed with special care in her best green dress with velvet trim. She'd purchased it in Cheyenne before coming to Palisade and had yet to find an occasion worthy of wearing it. The color complemented her auburn hair, which she arranged in a more elaborate style than her usual practical schoolteacher bun. The town hall had been transformed for the occasion, decorated with pine boughs and red ribbons. A small group of musicians played lively tunes in one corner, while tables laden with food lined another wall. It seemed the entire population of Palisade and the surrounding area had turned out for the celebration. Olivia was immediately drawn into conversations with parents and students, accepting compliments on the children's progress and answering questions about the upcoming spring term. She found herself scanning the growing crowd periodically, looking for Zach's familiar figure. He arrived nearly an hour into the festivities, accompanied by his ranch foreman and the two hands he'd hired. All were dressed in their Sunday best, though Zach stood out in a dark suit that emphasized his broad shoulders. Their eyes met across the room, and he offered a small nod of acknowledgement before being pulled into conversation with several local ranchers. Martha Willoughby appeared at Olivia's elbow, following her gaze. "He cleans up nicely, doesn't he?" she observed with a knowing smile. "Zachary Quinn has become quite the eligible bachelor in our little community. Mr. Quinn and I are merely acquaintances," Olivia said automatically. "Of course," Martha agreed, though her expression suggested she believed otherwise. "Though I must say, your Saturday meetings haven't gone unnoticed." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "We occasionally have coffee after I finish grading papers. There's nothing improper about it." "No one's suggesting impropriety, my dear," Martha patted her arm. "In fact, most folks think it's rather sweet, a schoolteacher and a rancher, quite the romance." "There is no romance," Olivia insisted, more firmly than she'd intended. Martha's eyebrows rose slightly. "If you say so. Though it might interest you to know that Rebecca Wilson, the widow who runs the millinery shop, has set her cap for him. She's been bringing pies out to his ranch regularly these past 2 weeks." Before Olivia could respond to this unexpected information, the music changed to a waltz, and couples began forming on the dance floor. Olivia excused herself from Martha's company, needing a moment to compose herself. The news about Rebecca Wilson shouldn't bother her. Zach was free to court whomever he wished. They had no understanding between them, so why did the thought of him with someone else create such a hollow feeling in her chest? She was standing near the refreshment table, absently sipping punch when Zach appeared before her. "Good evening, Miss Thornton," he said formally, though his eyes held a familiar warmth. "Would you honor me with this dance?" Several nearby townspeople glanced their way with interest, and Olivia knew declining would only fuel further speculation. Besides, they had agreed to share a dance as friends. "I'd be delighted, Mr. Quinn," she replied, setting aside her punch. His hand was warm and steady as he led her to the dance floor. When he placed his other hand at her waist and began guiding her through the waltz, Olivia was grateful for the dancing lessons her mother had insisted upon years ago. "You look beautiful tonight," Zach said quietly as they moved in time to the music. "Green suits you." "Thank you," she replied, finding it difficult to meet his gaze. "You're quite handsome yourself. I don't believe I've seen you in a suit before." "Don't get many occasions to wear it," he admitted with a small smile. "Feels strange after so long in work clothes." They completed a turn around the floor before he spoke again. "I've missed our conversation this past week. The weather kept me at the ranch." "Yes, the snow has been quite persistent," she agreed. "Several of my students haven't been able to attend classes." "Olivia," he said, his voice lowering, "are we really going to talk about the weather?" The directness of his question startled her. "What would you prefer to discuss?" His steps faltered briefly before he recovered. "Perhaps why you've been avoiding looking at me directly since I arrived tonight, or why you tensed when I mentioned missing our conversations." "I'm not avoiding anything," she protested, though she knew it wasn't entirely true. Zach guided them toward the edge of the dance floor, away from the most crowded area. "I think you are. I think we both know there's something growing between us that goes beyond friendship." Her heart raced at his words. "Zach, this isn't the place, then when? Every time we get close to acknowledging what's happening, you pull away." His expression was earnest, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I respect your independence and your dedication to teaching. I'm not asking you to change any of that. I'm just asking for honesty between us." The music was ending, couples around them preparing to separate. In moments, they would be surrounded by townspeople again, the opportunity for candor lost. "I heard about Rebecca Wilson bringing pies to your ranch," she blurted out, immediately wishing she could retract the words. Surprise crossed his features, followed by understanding. "Is that what this is about? Rebecca is a kind woman who's been helping everyone within a 5-mile radius since her husband passed. The pies were for my ranch hands, not me." Embarrassment flooded Olivia's cheeks. "It's none of my business either way. Isn't it?" he challenged gently as the music finally stopped. "Would it matter to you if I were courting someone else?" Before she could formulate a response, they were interrupted by Reverend Miller announcing the Christmas carol singing would begin shortly. The moment for private conversation had passed. "Think about it," Zach said softly, releasing her hand. "I'll be in town tomorrow for our usual coffee if you're willing." He stepped away, leaving Olivia with tumultuous thoughts and an ache in her chest that had nothing to do with the exertion of dancing. The following morning dawned clear and cold. Olivia had slept poorly, her mind replaying her conversation with Zach and the implications of his words. By sunrise, she'd made a decision. Their Saturday meeting couldn't continue under the pretense of mere friendship when both knew there were deeper feelings involved. She dressed warmly and walked into town earlier than their usual meeting time, intending to leave a note at the hotel explaining her absence. As she approached the main street, however, commotion near the sheriff's office caught her attention. A crowd had gathered, voices raised in concern. Pushing forward, Olivia spotted Sheriff Davis addressing the assembled townspeople. "No cause for general alarm," he was saying, "but we need volunteers for the search party. The stage was due in yesterday afternoon and never arrived. With this cold snap, we need to find them quickly." "What happened?" someone called out. "Don't know yet," the sheriff replied grimly. "Could be mechanical trouble, could be worse. Either way, there are passengers out there in dangerous cold." "I'll go," came Zach's voice from nearby, and Olivia's heart jumped at the sound. She hadn't seen him in the crowd. "I know the stage route well." Several other men volunteered, and Sheriff Davis began organizing them into groups. Olivia watched as Zach conferred with the sheriff, his expression serious. When he turned away to prepare his horse, she approached him. "Zach," she called, drawing his attention. He looked surprised to see her. "Olivia, what are you doing here so early?" "I heard the commotion," she explained. "The stage is missing." "Since yesterday," he confirmed, checking his saddle. "With this weather, the passengers won't last long without shelter. We need to find them quickly." Concern etched itself across her features. "Please be careful, the temperature's still dropping." His expression softened slightly. We'll talk when I get back, all right? There are things that need saying between us. She nodded, suddenly afraid for reasons that went beyond their unresolved conversation. Come back safely. Count on it, he promised, mounting his horse. With a last look at her, he joined the other searchers and they rode out of town. The day passed agonizingly slowly. Olivia tried to occupy herself with school preparations, but her mind continually returned to Zach and the others searching in the bitter cold. By mid-afternoon, snow began falling again, reducing visibility and surely complicating the search efforts. As dusk approached, Olivia abandoned all pretense of productivity and joined other worried townspeople gathering at the sheriff's office for news. Martha Willoughby found her there, sharing a bench in the cramped space. "They'll be all right," Martha assured her, though worry lined her own face. "These men know the territory. The temperature's dropping fast," Olivia replied, unable to mask her concern, "and the snow's getting heavier." "Have faith," Martha patted her hand. "That's all we can do now." It was nearly midnight when shouts from the edge of town announced the return of the search parties. Olivia rushed outside with the others, straining to see through the swirling snow. Riders appeared like ghosts in the darkness, some leading extra horses laden with bundled figures. "They found them," someone called out. "They've got the passengers." Relief swept through the crowd as the searchers approached. Lanterns illuminated exhausted faces as the men dismounted, helping half-frozen passengers toward the waiting doctor and volunteers with blankets and hot drinks. Olivia searched frantically for Zach among the returning men. She spotted Sheriff Davis directing the rescue effort and hurried to him. "Where's Zachary Quinn?" she asked, unable to keep the fear from her voice. The sheriff's grave expression sent ice through her veins. "Quinn and Cooper found the stage in a ravine off Thunder Pass. They got the passengers out, but Quinn went back for the driver who was trapped. There was an avalanche, small one, but enough to separate them from the rest of the group." "Is he?" She couldn't finish the question. "Don't know yet," Davis admitted. "Cooper made it back to the rendezvous point with 2 of the passengers, said Quinn was right behind him when the snow came down. Wilson and Taylor stayed behind to look for him, but with night falling and the storm worsening." Olivia felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Martha appeared beside her, a steadying arm around her shoulders. "They'll find him," Martha assured her. "Zach Quinn knows these mountains better than most." The night stretched endlessly as Olivia joined those caring for the rescued passengers. Working helped keep her mind from the darkest fears, though they lurked at the edges of her consciousness. 6 passengers had been recovered, a family of 4 and 2 businessmen, all suffering from exposure, but expected to recover. The stage driver remained missing, as did Zach. Dawn broke with no further news. The storm had intensified overnight, making additional search efforts impossible. Olivia returned to her quarters behind the schoolhouse only long enough to change clothes before heading back to town, unable to bear waiting alone. She was helping in the hotel kitchen, preparing food for the rescued passengers when a commotion erupted in the street. Abandoning her task, she ran outside to find Wilson and Taylor returning, supporting a third figure between them. "It's Quinn," someone shouted. "They found him." Olivia pushed through the gathering crowd, her heart in her throat. Zach was barely conscious, his face pale beneath a layer of frost, but unmistakably alive. Relief crashed through her with such force that she had to grip a nearby post for support. "Get him to Doc Miller's," ordered the sheriff. "Quickly now." The men half-carried Zach toward the doctor's house, and Olivia followed without thinking. At the door, however, the doctor's wife blocked her path. "Let the doctor work, Miss Thornton," she said firmly. "I'll send word when he can have visitors." The wait was excruciating. Olivia paced the boardwalk outside the doctor's house until Martha finally insisted she come to the hotel for hot tea and something to eat. "Wearing a path in the wood won't help him heal faster," the older woman pointed out. "You need to keep up your strength." It was mid-afternoon when word finally came that Zach was stable and could receive visitors briefly. Olivia nearly ran to the doctor's house, forcing herself to slow to a dignified pace as she approached the door. Doc Miller met her in the hallway. "He's weak but improving," he informed her. "Moderate frostbite on his hands and face, exhaustion, mild hypothermia. Could have been much worse if Wilson and Taylor hadn't found him when they did. And the stage driver, the doctor's expression sobered, didn't make it, I'm afraid. According to Quinn, the man was already gone when he reached him, but he tried to bring the body back anyway. That's when the avalanche hit. Olivia absorbed this news with sadness. May I see him now? 5 minutes, the doctor agreed. He needs rest more than anything. Zach was propped up slightly in the bed, his hands bandaged and face showing the reddened marks of frostbite. His eyes were closed when she entered, but he opened them at the sound of her footsteps. Olivia, he murmured, a small smile forming despite obvious pain. You're a sight for sore eyes. She approached the bedside, fighting the urge to take his bandaged hand in hers. You promised to be careful, she said, her voice catching slightly. Did my best, he replied. Got a bit complicated out there. I heard about the driver, I'm sorry. Zach's expression darkened. Couldn't leave him there, even though I knew it was too late. Some habits don't break easily. The instinct to help others isn't one you should try to break, she said softly. He studied her face. You've been worried. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. Yes, very. I'm sorry for that. His eyes held hers, but I'm glad to know you care. The simple statement cut through all her carefully constructed defenses. Of course I care, she whispered. How could I not? Before he could respond, Doc Miller appeared in the doorway. Time's up, Miss Thornton. My patient needs rest. Can she come back later? Zach asked, his voice stronger than it had been moments before. The doctor hesitated, then nodded. Briefly after supper, if you're resting properly until then. Olivia reluctantly moved toward the door. I'll be back, she promised. I'll be waiting, Zach replied, and something in his tone told her he meant more than just that evening's visit. As she stepped outside, Olivia realized with startling clarity that the fear of losing him had stripped away her last pretenses. The reasons she'd constructed for keeping distance between them suddenly seemed flimsy compared to the reality of how deeply she cared. When she returned that evening, Zach was sitting up more comfortably. Some color returned to his face. His smile when she entered warmed her more thoroughly than the fire burning in the doctor's office. You look better, she observed, taking the chair beside his bed. Amazing what a few hours of sleep can do, he replied. Doc says I can return to my room at the hotel tomorrow if I continue improving. That's wonderful news. She hesitated, then continued. Zach, about our conversation at the social, you don't have to say anything, he interrupted gently. I pushed too hard. You have your reasons for caution, and I respect that. No, please let me finish, she insisted. When I heard you were missing, when I thought I might never see you again. She took a steadying breath. It made me realize I've been hiding behind excuses. The truth is, I'm afraid. Afraid of what? He asked softly. Of feeling this much, of risking my heart again after losing so many I loved. She met his gaze directly. Of how much it would hurt to lose you too, understanding dawned in his eyes. Olivia, I can't promise nothing will ever happen to me. Life out here has its dangers, but I can promise that what I feel for you is real and true. What exactly do you feel? She asked, needing to hear the words. I love you, he said simply. Have since somewhere between that stagecoach robbery and our first Saturday coffee. I tried not to, knowing you valued your independence, but some things can't be fought. Tears threatened at his declaration. I think I've loved you just as long, she admitted. I just wouldn't let myself acknowledge it. Zach carefully extended his bandaged hand, and this time she took it, mindful of his injuries. Where do we go from here? He asked. I don't know exactly, she confessed. I still value my teaching position and you have your ranch. We take it one day at a time, he suggested. No rush, no pressure. We court properly, get to know each other even better. The prospect brought a smile to her face. I'd like that. Me too, he agreed, squeezing her hand gently despite the bandages. When Doc Miller appeared to end the visit, Olivia left with a lighter heart than she'd had in months. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Spring came to Wyoming with its customary mix of lingering snow and sudden warm days. The land awakened slowly, revealing patches of green beneath the melting white blanket. At the Quinn Ranch, calving season kept Zach and his men busy from dawn until dusk, while in town, Olivia prepared her students for their year-end examinations. Their courtship progressed steadily through these busy months. Saturday coffee meetings continued, now openly acknowledged as courting rather than merely friendly conversations. Occasionally, when school and ranch responsibilities allowed, Zach would take Olivia on proper outings, picnics by the creek once the weather warmed, or dinner at the hotel when he came to town for business. The townsfolk watched their developing relationship with approving interest. Even Martha Willoughby, initially concerned about the propriety of the schoolteacher courting openly, had to admit that their obvious affection and respectful behavior set a fine example for the community. By early May, with the school year nearing its end, Olivia had accepted the school board's offer to return for another term in the fall. The decision had come after considerable thought and several heartfelt conversations with Zach. "You're certain this is what you want?" he asked as they walked along the creek that bordered his property. It was a Sunday afternoon, one of the rare days when ranch duties permitted him a few hours of leisure. "You know there's a place for you here, whenever you're ready." Olivia appreciated both his support and his patience. "I love teaching," she explained, "and I've made a commitment to these children, but yes, someday." She left the thought unfinished, though they both understood its meaning. They stopped beneath a large cottonwood tree, its new leaves rustling softly in the spring breeze. Zach took both her hands in his, all signs of the winter's frostbite long healed. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "It's not fancy, but it belonged to my mother." He withdrew a small gold ring set with a single pearl. Olivia's breath caught as he held it between them. "This isn't a proposal, not yet," he clarified quickly. "It's a promise. When you're ready, when we're both ready, I want to make a life with you, Olivia. This ring is my pledge that I'll wait, however long it takes." Tears of happiness sprang to her eyes. "It's beautiful, Zach." "Like her, my father always said, and like you," he smiled softly. "Will you wear it, as a promise between us?" "Yes," she whispered, extending her right hand. "With all my heart, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into a gentle embrace. When their lips met, it felt like coming home after a long journey. Summer passed in a blur of activity. Olivia spent most weekdays teaching a small group of students whose parents wanted additional instruction during the school break, while weekends often found her at the ranch, getting to know the place that might someday be her home. Zach expanded his operation, purchasing adjacent land when a neighboring rancher decided to retire. The work was demanding but satisfying, and on evenings when Olivia visited, they would sit on the porch of the ranch house, planning for a future that grew clearer with each passing day. By the time autumn painted the landscape in golds and reds, they had settled into a comfortable rhythm. The new school year began, bringing fresh challenges and joys for Olivia. Zach prepared his ranch for the coming winter, ensuring adequate feed for the cattle and reinforcing buildings against snow and wind. Their Saturday meetings continued, though now they often included planning for a shared future. The promise ring on Olivia's right hand caught the light when she gestured, a constant reminder of what awaited when she was ready to take the next step. That moment came on a crisp November evening, nearly a year after the Christmas social where they had first acknowledged their feelings. Zach had invited her to dinner at the ranch, an unusual occurrence on a weeknight. When she arrived, she found the house transformed, lanterns glowing warmly, the table set with his mother's china, and a fire crackling in the hearth. "What's the occasion?" she asked as he took her coat. "No special occasion," he claimed, though the twinkle in his eye suggested otherwise. "Just wanted to do something nice." The meal was delicious venison stew that Zach had prepared himself, with biscuits from the recipe his mother had passed down. They talked easily about their days, the upcoming winter, and the latest news from town. As they finished eating, Zach grew uncharacteristically quiet. Olivia watched him curiously as he seemed to gather his thoughts. "Something on your mind?" she prompted gently. He met her gaze, a mixture of nervousness and determination in his expression. "Yes, actually." He reached across the table for her hand. "Olivia, these past months have been the happiest of my life. Every day I get to see you, talk with you, share with you. It just confirms what I've known all along." Her heart quickened as he rose from his chair and came around the table, still holding her hand. "I promised to wait until you were ready," he continued, kneeling beside her chair, "and I would wait forever if necessary. But I find myself hoping that maybe, just maybe, your heart has reached the same place as mine." From his pocket, he withdrew a second ring, this one a simple gold band with a small diamond that caught the firelight. "Olivia Thornton, I love you more than I ever thought possible. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Time seemed to stand still as emotion washed through her. The hesitations and fears that had once seemed so important had faded over the months of their courtship, replaced by a certainty that had been growing steadily within her heart. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and sure. "Yes, Zach, I will marry you." Joy transformed his features as he slipped the engagement ring onto her left hand, where it nestled perfectly beside the promise ring. She now moved to her right. When he rose to embrace her, Olivia felt as though her happiness might overflow, filling the room and spilling out into the Wyoming night. "When?" he asked, once their celebratory kiss had ended. "I was thinking perhaps Christmas break," she suggested. "The school will be closed for 2 weeks. It gives us time for a small honeymoon before classes resume." His smile widened. "Christmas it is. 1 year after that dance when we finally admitted how we felt." "It seems fitting," she agreed, leaning into his embrace. News of their engagement spread quickly through Palisade. Martha Willoughby insisted on hosting an engagement party, while Reverend Miller helped them plan the ceremony. Olivia wrote to her remaining family in Boston, distant cousins, who had taken little interest in her westward journey and received polite but unenthusiastic responses. It mattered little. She had found a new family here in Wyoming. As December approached, preparations intensified. The schoolhouse would serve as the location for both ceremony and celebration, decorated with pine boughs and winter berries by Olivia's students, who were delighted by their teacher's happiness. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, the landscape a pristine white canvas beneath a brilliant blue sky. Olivia stood in her living quarters behind the schoolhouse, dressed in a gown of ivory silk that Martha and several other town women had helped her create. It was simpler than what she might have worn in Boston, but perfectly suited to her new life and the woman she had become. A soft knock at the door announced Martha's arrival to escort her to the ceremony. "Ready, my dear?" the older woman asked, tears already glistening in her eyes. "You look absolutely beautiful." "I'm ready," Olivia confirmed, gathering her small bouquet of winter greenery and dried flowers. The nervous fluttering in her stomach wasn't doubt, it was anticipation of the life waiting to begin. The schoolhouse had been transformed. Students' desks had been moved aside to create an aisle leading to the front where Reverend Miller waited. Candles and lanterns illuminated the space, their warm glow reflecting off the fresh pine decorations. Nearly every resident of Palisade and the surrounding area filled the room, turning to watch as Olivia entered. But Olivia saw only Zach, standing tall and handsome in his best suit, love shining in his eyes as she walked toward him. Cooper, serving as best man, stood beside him, while young Alice Henderson, Olivia's star pupil, had been chosen as maid of honor. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion. They had written their own vows, simple promises to love, honor, and cherish each other through whatever life might bring. When Reverend Miller pronounced them husband and wife, Zach's kiss was gentle but filled with promise, drawing appreciative applause from their gathered friends. The celebration continued well into the evening, with music, dancing, and enough food to feed the entire county. As darkness fell outside, Olivia found a moment of quiet with her new husband near the schoolhouse window. "Happy, Mrs. Quinn?" Zach asked softly, his arm around her waist. "Completely," she assured him, leaning into his embrace. "Though it may take some time to get used to the name. We have plenty of time," he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "A lifetime." Later that night, after farewells and well wishes, Zach drove the sleigh that would take them to his ranch, their ranch now. Snow glittered in the moonlight, and stars blazed overhead in the clear Wyoming sky. Nestled beside her husband beneath warm blankets, Olivia felt a contentment deeper than any she had known before. As they approached the ranch house, now lit with welcoming lanterns thanks to Cooper's preparations, Zach drew the horses to a halt. In the stillness of the winter night, he turned to her, his expression suddenly serious. "What is it?" she asked, concerned by the change. "I was just thinking," he said, taking her gloved hands in his, "about that day we met. The stagecoach robbery, how everything might have been different if I hadn't heard those shots, if you hadn't been so brave." She smiled at the memory. "Fate works in mysterious ways. More than that," he continued. "I realized something today, watching you walk toward me in that schoolhouse. We've both been alone for so long, me out here on the frontier, you after losing your family. Both of us thinking that was just how life had to be." The cowboy said. "We've been alone too long," she whispered. "Then let's end the waiting." Their kiss beneath the star-filled sky sealed the promise of a lifetime together. No longer alone, but united in love that would carry them through whatever adventures awaited. Spring brought new life to the Quinn Ranch. Calves dotted the greening pastures. Wildflowers bloomed along the creek banks, and Olivia planted a garden beside the house that she and Zach had expanded over the winter. The addition of a second bedroom and larger kitchen had transformed the bachelor's cabin into a proper home, with touches of Olivia's taste evident in the curtains, quilts, and bookshelves filled with volumes from both their collections. Balancing her teaching position with her role as a rancher's wife proved less challenging than Olivia had initially feared. She rode to town each morning in good weather, or Zach would drive her in the wagon when rain or lingering snow made the trails difficult. The town had hired an assistant teacher, a young woman from Denver, who was eager to learn from Olivia's experience, allowing for more flexibility in her schedule. Their first wedding anniversary arrived with a special announcement. As Christmas candles glowed in the windows of their home, Olivia placed Zach's hand gently over her still flat stomach. "I have a gift for you," she said softly. "One that won't arrive until summer." His expression transformed from confusion to wonder as understanding dawned. "A baby." "We're having a baby," her smile answered before her words. "Yes, Dr. Miller confirmed it yesterday. Our family is growing." The joy that illuminated his face was everything she had hoped for. He gathered her carefully in his arms as though she had suddenly become fragile, precious glass. "I never thought," he whispered against her hair, "after all those years alone to have you and now a child." "Our child," she completed, her own happiness matching his, "a new chapter in our story." The months of waiting passed in a flurry of preparation and anticipation. Zach converted part of their bedroom into a nursery, crafting a cradle from pine with his own hands. Olivia continued teaching until the end of the school year, then turned her attention to readying their home for the new arrival. On a sweltering July afternoon, after many hours of labor with Martha Willoughby and Dr. Miller in attendance, Olivia gave birth to a healthy son. They named him Samuel, after Zach's uncle whose legacy had brought them together, with William as a middle name to honor Olivia's father. "He's perfect," Zach murmured, holding his son with careful reverence. "He has your eyes." "And your chin," Olivia observed, exhausted but radiant, strong like his father. Life adjusted to accommodate their growing family. Olivia took a year's leave from teaching to care for Samuel, though she occasionally substituted when needed. Zach expanded the ranch operations, hiring additional hands to allow him more time with his wife and son. Their home rang with laughter and love, the loneliness that had once defined both their lives now a distant memory. As Samuel grew from infant to toddler, Olivia returned to teaching part-time, bringing him with her to school several days a week. The students adored little Sam, and he flourished in the environment, showing early signs of his mother's intelligence and his father's curious nature. 3 years after Samuel's birth, the family welcomed a daughter, Elizabeth Martha Quinn, named for both Olivia's mother and the woman who had become like a mother to her in Wyoming. With 2 small children, Olivia made the decision to step back from formal teaching, though she continued to tutor advanced students at the ranch and remained active on the school board. The years flowed by, marked by the changing seasons and the milestones of their children's lives. Samuel grew into a thoughtful young man with his father's skill with horses and his mother's love of books. Elizabeth, fiercely independent from her earliest days, developed a talent for drawing and a determination that served her well on the frontier. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Zach surprised Olivia with a trip to Denver, their first significant journey away from the ranch since their marriage. The children stayed with Cooper and his wife, now managing a neighboring property, while Zach and Olivia enjoyed the relative sophistication of the growing city. "It feels strange," Olivia admitted as they attended a concert in Denver's new opera house. "To be surrounded by so many people, so much activity. Do you miss it?" Zach asked, a hint of concern in his voice. "The bustle of city life," she considered the question seriously before shaking her head. "No, I appreciate visiting, seeing new sights, hearing beautiful music. But Palisade, our ranch, that's home now. I wouldn't trade our life there for anything." The relief in his smile was evident. "I feel the same way, though I wouldn't mind bringing the children here someday, letting them see a different world." "They'd love that," she agreed. "Samuel already has his heart set on attending university when he's older." "And he will," Zach assured her. "We'll make sure both our children have every opportunity, even if it means sending them east for education." Their conversation continued over dinner at the hotel restaurant, planning for the future while celebrating their past. Later, in the privacy of their hotel room, they reminisced about the early days of their relationship. "Do you remember that first ride to the way station?" Zach asked, holding her close. "After the stagecoach robbery, you were so determined to maintain proper distance." Olivia laughed softly. "I was trying very hard not to notice how safe I felt with you, even in the midst of danger." "And I was trying not to notice how perfectly you fit against me," he admitted. "Or how brave you'd been, grabbing that shotgun. We've come so far since then," she mused, tracing the lines that a decade of Wyoming sun and wind had etched at the corners of his eyes. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, and other times it seems like another lifetime entirely. The best decision I ever made was stopping when I heard those gunshots," Zach said, his voice growing serious. "Finding you there, behind that wagon, it changed everything. For me too," she whispered. "Even if I was too stubborn to admit it for months afterward." Their return to the ranch brought joyous reunion with their children and a renewed appreciation for the life they'd built together. The Quinn Ranch had prospered over the years, becoming one of the more successful operations in the region. Their home had expanded again to accommodate their growing family and the books that continued to be Olivia's passion. As Palisade grew, so did its educational needs. By the time Samuel was 12 and Elizabeth 9, the town had constructed a proper school building with multiple classrooms. Olivia was asked to serve as headmistress, a position that allowed her to shape curriculum while maintaining time for her family. She accepted with Zach's full support, and the arrangement proved beneficial for both the school and the Quinn family. Life wasn't without challenges. Drought struck one summer, forcing difficult decisions about livestock and testing the community's resilience. A particularly harsh winter claimed some of their cattle despite best efforts to protect the herd. Samuel broke his arm falling from a horse he wasn't supposed to be riding, while Elizabeth's spirited nature occasionally led to conflicts with classmates and neighbors. Through each trial, Olivia and Zach faced the challenges together, their partnership strengthened by years of shared experiences. The promise they had made beneath the stars on their wedding night to end their solitude, to build a life united, remained the foundation of their relationship. 20 years after their first meeting, as they watched Samuel prepare to depart for university in Denver and Elizabeth blossom into a young woman with dreams of her own, Zach found Olivia sitting on their porch swing, gazing at the sunset painting the Wyoming sky in brilliant orange and purple. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, settling beside her, the swing creaking gently beneath their weight. "I was just thinking about how different my life might have been," she replied, leaning against his shoulder, a position as familiar and comfortable as breathing. "If that stagecoach hadn't been robbed, if you hadn't come riding to the rescue, you'd likely have made it to Palisade anyway," he pointed out. "We might have met at church or when you came to the ranch for a school outing." "Perhaps," she agreed. "But it might have taken us even longer to admit how we felt." Zach chuckled, the sound deepening with age but no less warm. Given how stubborn we both were, probably. They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. From inside the house came the sound of Elizabeth practicing the piano they'd purchased for her 15th birthday, the melody drifting through open windows. "No regrets?" Zach asked, the question he still posed occasionally, even after all these years. Olivia turned to face him, taking in the features she knew better than her own, the silver now threading through his dark hair, the laugh lines deepening around his eyes, the steadfast strength that had never wavered. "Not one," she assured him, meaning it as completely as the first time she'd answered. "Every choice, every moment has led us here. How could I regret any of it?" His kiss held the same tenderness it had when they'd first acknowledged their love, yet carried the depth that only decades of shared life could create. When they parted, his eyes held hers with unwavering devotion. "Remember what I said that night before our first Christmas together?" he asked. "When we stopped the sleigh under the stars," she smiled, the memory as clear as if it had happened yesterday. "You said we'd been alone too long. And you said, then let's end the waiting," she completed softly, his arm tightened around her shoulders. "Best decision we ever made." As darkness settled fully over their land, they remained on the porch swing, two lives intertwined by choice and circumstance, by courage and commitment. What had begun with danger and uncertainty had grown into a love story written across the Wyoming landscape, in a home built with care, in children raised with devotion, in a community strengthened by their contributions. The loneliness that had once defined them, both had been replaced by a fullness neither could have imagined on that fateful day when a stagecoach robbery brought them together. Their journey from strangers to friends to lovers to partners had unfolded across seasons and years, each chapter adding depth to a story still being written. And as the stars multiplied overhead, familiar constellations marking the passage of time, Olivia and Zach Quinn held each other close, grateful for the path that had led them home.